We're talking right now about lead generation, and this is one of my favorite lead generation. It is the hardest. This is how I started, and we're talking about door knocking domination. So way back when, in 2003, I bought a course from a guy on the radio, and in his course, he taught how to knock on pre-foreclosure doors. I made $134,000 in my first 9 months knocking on pre-foreclosure doors, primarily with this method alone, right? I didn't have any cool lists and direct mail marketing and understand postcards or understand all these cool marketing methods. All I knew was to get a list and knock on doors. That's all I knew. So the first door I knocked on was the scariest door I knocked on. I actually walked up to the house. Actually, I didn't even walk up to the house. I got the list at first, and I was kind of in my head, kind of rehearsing what I was going to say. And I remember I drove up and down the street, kind of casing the house. I was kind of looking as I was driving down the street. And then I stopped way around the corner, and I got my little notepad there, and I got what I wanted to say, and in my pre-foreclosure, and I walked up, and I was walking down the street, and I came up, and I was in front of the house, and they had this huge truck with these gigantic knobby tires, and it wasn't parked in the driveway. It was parked across the front yard, and they didn't have any grass. It was all dirt. It was just parked in the front yard. Now, remember, this was May of 2003, so it was pretty hot outside. So as I walked around the truck, I got to the front door, and there was one of those screen doors that were sitting there. Now, I couldn't really see behind the screen door, because if you ever bend behind a screen door, you can't see what's behind it. So I knocked on the screen door. It kind of shook a little bit, and I kind of stood back with my little notepad there, and I wanted to say, hi, my name's Sean, and I want to help you before your house goes to sale on so-and-so date. That's what I wanted to say. So what happened was I knocked on the screen door, and this gigantic figure came behind the door. It just like kind of lurked up, and this big shadow came behind the screen door. You couldn't really see behind it. And he opened the screen door, and he looks at me, and he goes, "What do you want?" And I literally went, "Ugh!" And I jumped back, and I took me completely off guard. This dude was about 6'6", 6'7". No, maybe not 6'7", about 6'5", 6'6". He was all sweaty. His head was kind of shaved. He had this tank top on. He had hair all sticking out of the place. And he was like, shirt was all dirty. And he goes, "What do you want?" And I'm like, I just want to see the house that is going to sell. And I could not get out of my mouth what I wanted to say. And I remember I freaked out. Now, guys, remember, I was 33 years old. I was a prior U.S. Marine. I played football in high school. You know, I was a grown man, had a kid at home, and I'm sitting there going, and I literally turned around and hightailed it back to my car. I was like, walking back to my car. And I remember getting in the car, and I was thinking, I can't do this. I quit. I can't do this. I can't do this. And I was so distraught. I was so I can't do this. And right at that point, I considered quitting. I considered giving up on my dreams. It was too difficult. I thought about how many doors I had to knock on to actually potentially get a deal. It was such a big, massive obstacle that I was like, I can't do it. And I was completely deflated, deflated, and I can't do this. And I turned on my car, and at the time I had a cassette tape, and I had that cassette tape was in, and it started playing, and it was Think and Grow Rich. Now, if you haven't read the book, Think and Grow Rich, written by Napoleon Hill, I highly recommend it. Phenomenal book, game-changing book. It's one of the best success books you could ever read. And in that, it was the Audible, or the book, not the Audible, but it was a cassette tape of that book. And at that point of the cassette, and I had 35 cassette tapes, right? And I had to put them in and put them out. I had a little binder. And at that one point of the message was talking about Winston Churchill in his famous quote of never, ever, 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 ever give up, right? You can anybody can have success if you never, ever, ever give up. So success is inevitable if you never quit. Now, it just happened to be at that point, and you know what? It was a sign for me. I was like, before I turned on that car, I was like, I can't do this. I quit. I literally said, I quit. I can't do this. I'm going to go, I can't do it. And when that came on, I was like, you know what? This is a sign. I can't quit. And what I looked at is I looked at the pain of going back to where I was, the life before where I was, living month to month, being stressed out, wanting more in my life, wanting to have success, but not being able to find it, and just struggling all the time. Felt like I was going upriver on everything. It was like taking a round peg and trying to push it into a square hole. You just can't do it. It was difficult. Everything was hard in life. And then I had this opportunity, and it gave me excitement of motivation. Maybe I can change my life. And now I had the opportunity. Now I was actually putting in the work, which we all know it takes action to have success. I was actually putting in the work, and my first action of knocking on the first door ended up being terrible, and I was ready to throw in the towel. And I looked at, if I don't do this, I'm going to go back to my boring, terrible life that sucks. Or, you know what? I looked at, even if there's pain talking to sellers, there's pain of being humiliated, the pain of going through growth pains, pain of being outside my comfort zone. I'd rather have that pain of learning than the pain of going to back where I was with no hope. And right there, I decided with resolve that I am going to commit whatever, and I'm going to do whatever it takes, and I'm going to go. I don't care if I have to knock on doors 7 days a week until my knuckles are bloody. I'm going to find a way to do it, and I'm going to find a seller that wants to do it. And I attacked with a resolve, and I'm going to make it happen. And when you get to that point in your life or your business, you get to that point in your you're doing this, because it will bring you to the brink of failure, because success is going to come so quickly for you. Success is going to be so huge for you that, it's almost like the universe testing to see how bad you want it. And once you cross that line and you get that resolve, and I'm not quitting, all of a sudden things start to open up for you. But I made that resolve, and I went out and knocked on doors. I knocked and knocked and knocked, and I finally found, knocking on doors, my first deal. And that first deal, I made $11,008, and I think it was like 81 cents. And that, my friends, changed everything for me, And I want that for you. So I am passionate about the whole door knocking domination thing, and we figured out a way to make it a little easier, but there still is work involved. This is a great way, especially if you have REI Automator, to get a list, and you can go out and you can go knock on doors and you can talk to sellers. Now, don't be above it, right? To think you're too good to do it. I love knocking on doors, right? And guess what? The more you knock on doors, you become resilient, right? You don't care if someone says, all right, don't leave me alone. But there's gonna be a lot of people that you're gonna talk to that need your help desperately, and they're not gonna answer the phone. They're not gonna answer your direct mail. They're not going to talk to anybody but except someone that comes to their door, and you could be their saving grace. So let's get into door knocking. Pre-foreclosures are what we're door knocking. These pre-foreclosures are people that haven't paid their mortgage and they're about to lose their house. And if you don't help them out, they're gonna get their credit ruined. They're gonna potentially lose their house. They're gonna lose their equity, and you can help solve that. So what we're gonna do is the process of door knocking is the list, the script, the offer, and the closing. So if for some reason they're not there, then what I like doing is going to the FedEx office, grabbing a bunch of FedEx envelopes, and then I stuff a letter in that FedEx envelope and I'll stick it on the door. I just don't want to leave a note there because that note, sometimes they rip off. But if you have a FedEx notice right there, you put it in, you seal it off, you stick it in the door, there's a good chance they will open that and they're going to get your letter. Also below this video or on the side of this video somewhere, there is the letter that we use. You can duplicate that letter, change that letter, modify it for yourself. But then you definitely want to leave something. You already got there. You drove to the house. and now you want to be able to get there. So the offer, we want to offer net cash at closing versus a purchase price. So what does that mean? So because there's a loan in place on the property and it's in foreclosure, we typically talk to the seller, instead of saying, hey, what would you like to sell your house for? We're going to say, let me ask you a question. What's the minimum cash you need to move? Right? So now they have the loan, they're in foreclosure, $150,000. Instead of saying, I want $170,000, you say, what's the minimum cash you need to move? Well, I need $5,000. Now you've got $5,000. You're going to give them $5,000 net to the seller, and you're going to essentially pay off that existing $150,000. Agree to pay settlements of mortgages, liens, late payments, all that type of stuff. On this page, there's a actual contract with the verbiage in that particular contract. But essentially, we're paying the settlements of. So if they have second liens and judgments, you have the ability to negotiate those. And I want to get into it right now. This is primarily about door knocking and getting a deal. We'll get into offering on a little bit later. But vacate property on or before closing, 30-day inspection. Now, closing, net cash to seller. Total to bring loan current, you need that, which is called the reinstatement, payoff balance on mortgage, and sell property to a cash buyer for the spread. So essentially, let's say theoretically you have a seller that has a $150,000 mortgage and they're $5,000 behind on payments, right? And they want $5,000 to move. So now it's $160,000. So you go, okay, Mr. Seller, let me ask you a question. What's the minimum cash you need to move? $5,000. So you say, buyer agrees to pay seller $5,000 net at closing, right? So now what you do is now you turn around and that's the number. Now with the settlement, because a lot of times the seller is not going to know the exact back payments and they can't really commit to a number of $160,000. And what happens is if they commit to $160,000, that number's higher, then they're going to be screwed and they're going to want to back out of the contract. So this gives you a little bit more latitude to be able to potentially negotiate second tier loans on the property, but also too, it allows you to make sure that you understand the seller gets the net. A lot of sellers don't want to commit because they don't know what's owed on the mortgage. They don't know what's owed in back payments. So they don't want to agree to a price. So their objection is, well, let me get all my numbers and then I'll come back and then we'll talk. We don't want that. Then we say, listen, how much cash do you need to move? Well, I need $7,000. Okay, if we can give you $7,000, do we got a deal? Great. Buyer agrees to pay seller $7,000 at net. Now you have the mortgage. Now you have the payment. Now you can get those numbers, the total to bring the loan current, whatever that number is, the total payoff balance. You have that. Then sell the property for those numbers plus the $5,000 or $7,000 to the seller, and that's your spread that you can make. Let's say you're all in for 160 and you turn around, sell it for 180. Well, your spread now is $20,000. The seller gets the $5,000 and the mortgage gets paid off. The foreclosure stops and his credit is then restored. So that is the closing. Winston Churchill, success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Now, for me, I was in my car and guess what? Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It wasn't fatal. I failed, and I just had the courage to continue to keep going. And that's what counts in this business, is keep moving forward, irregardless of what the results are. And if you fall in love with the process, if you fall in love with generating leads, you fall in love with setting appointments, you fall in love with making offers, you will get contracts, you will get deals, and you will make profit. And it doesn't matter who you plug into the process, success is inevitable if you never quit. So do me a favor right now. Commit right now. Right now. I don't care where you're at. I don't care if it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't care if you're listening to this in your car. You might be at the gym. You might be doing whatever you're doing right now. You might be watching this. You know, kids are watching TV and you're sitting there watching this. Commit to me right now that you will never, ever, ever quit. And if you commit, guess what? There's a time that you and I could be hanging out together, because guess what? We have some cool masterminds we have that you can attend. We go to exotic places and we get some really cool with some high level people. Start crushing it. Get some deals done. Start getting some momentum. Commit to me now that you're never going to quit. Have an awesome one. I'll see you in the next video. God bless.